Hey guys, for today's video, I'll go over the newly buffed Kafka to show you how to reach her full potential. I'll cover her newly buffed kits, her traces, her relics and ornaments, her Lightcones, her teams, and her Eidolons as well. For her kit, her skill deals lightning damage to one designated enemy and to their adjacent enemies. And if the designated enemy or the adjacent targets are currently receiving dots, all dots currently placed on that enemy immediately produce damage equal to 75% or 50% of the original damage, which makes Kafka insanely powerful for dot teams, since you'll now be able to trigger all the dots that your other dot characters apply. Her ultimate states that she deals lightning damage equal to all enemies with a 100% base chance for attacked enemy targets to become shocked, which is a dot effect that does 290% of Kafka's attack, and she immediately triggers the dot effects equal to 120% of its original damage. Again, even through her ultimate, Kafka is triggering all the dots that have been placed on the enemy, including her own and the dots applied by her other allies. Not only that, but she's also implanting a dot of her own. For her talent, it states that after Kafka's teammate uses an attack on an enemy target, Kafka immediately launches a follow-up attack and deals lightning damage with a 100% base chance to inflict shock, with this effect being able to be triggered up to 2 times, with one use being recovered at the end of Kafka's turn. This talent is pretty decent since it allows Kafka to apply more dots even when it's not her turn. For her traces, her first trace states that when an ally targets its effect hit rate is 75% or more, Kafka increases the target's attack by 100%, which is incredibly powerful for dot teams, since dot doesn't scale off of crit stats and only requires attack, damage multipliers, and effect hit rate, meaning that when, not if, her and her dot teammates reach 75% effect hit rate, they'll get a massive boost and a crucial stat for dot characters. Her other trace states that if an enemy is defeated while shocked, Kafka additionally regenerates 5 energy. The talent's follow-up attack gains 1 more stack, and the follow-up attack can now trigger all dots to produce damage equal to 80% of the original damage, meaning that she really wants her ultimate to generate her follow-up attack stacks so that she can trigger a ton more dot effects, which is why her other trace that gives her 5 energy when defeating an enemy who is in the shocked state is actually pretty good. So how do you actually apply all of this Kafka kit knowledge? Well, you're gonna want to play Kafka in a dot team. If you don't, well then don't even play her. Her entire kit revolves around triggering dots more than applying dots, so her main purpose on a dot team is to trigger the dots that her other teammates apply. So when playing Kafka, you're gonna want to spam her ultimate so that she can recover more stacks for her talents, and you're also gonna want to spam her skill since her skill also triggers dots. Now what does Kafka actually offer? Well, Kafka, as I've already said, is going to be an essential component for dot teams because she can trigger dots through numerous ways, with the majority of these ways being available when it's not her turn, which is crucial because the dot playstyle suffers from a multitude of flaws, with one of them being the fact that you typically have to wait for an enemy turn before you can do any damage at all. But with Kafka, you can do damage way faster than even the break playstyle, where you have to break the enemy's toughness multiple times throughout the battle. Because of this, she's actually the best investment for dot teams, even when compared to Eidolons, who was the irreplaceable main DPS for the dot playstyle, meaning that if you want to get into dot teams, Kafka will be the best investments out of all of them, far better than any Eidolon, signature Lightcone, or top tier supports like Tribby or Robin. She'll even be better than Black Swan, who is another incredibly powerful dot character. This can be seen by the fact that before Kafka got her buff, the dot playstyle wasn't even able to clear 1 phase of MOC in less than 10 turns, but now they're able to clear in at least 8 cycles, which still isn't that good, which is why Eidolons is still very important, since Eidolons with Kafka can help the dot playstyle reach meta levels. Also, if you couldn't tell already, Kafka will be extremely bad in any other teams that aren't dot teams, meaning that for her teams, she's gonna be heavily restricted, since she only has a couple of options for the other sub DPS / amplifier on her team, with Eidolons being a must. Now, even though she is pretty much irreplaceable in dot teams because of her buffs, her Lightcone tells a different story, since apparently, when the developers wanted to buff out characters, they didn't think about buffing their signature Lightcones as well. So, ironically, her signature Lightcone isn't actually her best in slot Lightcone, unless she is at E4 and is able to gain a ton of energy from it. Instead, her Lightcone is her 3rd best option, with Cypher's Lightcone being her best, and Cypher's and Silverwolf's as well. So low-key, just get Cypher's Lightcone cause it has way more pull value, and Zhao Chus's Lightcone being her 2nd best. For her teams, again, she's only gonna be viable in dot teams, and with teammates that either increase attack, damage dealt, affect hit rate, or decrease defense and all type res. Thus, her best teammates are gonna be Eidolons, Black Black Swan, Jiao Cho, Ruan Mei, Cypher, Tribi, Huohuo, and Robin. Hyselines is going to be a really good teammate with Kafka since she's the dot playstylist's best DPS. Thus, Kafka, being the dot playstylist's best sub DPS, is going to be incredibly powerful with her. Hyselines also has a trace that increases allies' damage dealt by 90%, which synergizes extremely well with Kafka's 100% attack from her own trace. Not only that, but Hyselines applies a ton of debuffs with her ultimate and traces, which is really good since Kafka can just trigger them all. Black Swan will also be good because she is one of the best sub DPS for the dot playstyle. She applies a ton of dots and she decreases the defense of the enemies. Jiao Cho will also be decent since he's able to apply more debuffs, which can give your dot characters an advantage if they're using the Pioneer Diver of Dead Water sets. Not only that, but he also increases damage dealt by 40%. Ruan Mei will also be good because she increases damage dealt by around 68% and gives 25% all-type breast pen. Not only that, but her ultimate, which delays enemies, helps with triggering more dots. Robin will also be an extremely good option because she gives a ton of attack percentage, damage dealt, and she advances everyone forward. Not only that, but her sub DPS is pretty good. Cypher will also be good because she can apply vulnerability unconditionally throughout the battle, and her true damage buff works with dots. Tribi will also be really good because similarly to Ruan Mei, she can increase all-type breast pen and damage dealt, and similarly to Robin, she has pretty good sub DPS and can advance allies forward with her ultimate if she has the Dance 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 Lightcone. Huohuo will also be a really good support since she's really the only sustainer who can also increase attack. Not only that, but she also provides energy, which will come in handy when trying to get Kafka's ultimate and talent triggers. Still, you should be able to use other top tier sustainers and be just fine. For her Eidolons, her E1 has a 100% base chance to cause the target to take 30% more dot for 2 turns after using her basic attack, which is pretty good since even though it's a single target attack, because Kafka has so much speed, she should be able to keep up this debuff while also triggering her own dots through her skill. Her E2 increases dot dealt by all allies by 33%, which has no strings tied to it, meaning that it's pretty much just 33% more damage dealt, which is decent, but for an E2, this is pretty subpar. For her E4, it states that when an enemy target takes damage from the shock status inflicted by Kafka, Kafka additionally regenerates 2 energy, which again, when combined with her own Lightcone, is really good for her ultimate. For her E6, it states that the damage multiplier for shock increases by 156%, and it extends the duration of shock on the enemy target by 1 turn, which is horrible for an E6 and pretty bad for any Eidolon. For my pulling recommendations, which aren't financial advice, I would recommend only pulling on Kafka if you have Hyselines, and the other characters I mentioned in the team section since she doesn't really work without any of them. If you're looking to vertically invest in her, I would recommend going for her E2 at most, even if her E4 is really good with her Lightcone, since the other dot characters like Hyselines and Black Swan just have better Eidolons for dot teams. I also wouldn't recommend going for her Lightcone, since again, it isn't even her best in slot unless you're also going for E4, which I wouldn't recommend because of how costly it is. So only go for Kafka if you can play in dot teams and prioritize other characters as Eidolons, more specifically E1 Black Swan and E1 Hyselines with Black Swan's signature, or you can go with E2 Hyselines with Hyselines' own signature, depending on how much you're willing on vertically investing into Hyselines and horizontally investing onto Kafka before getting Kafka's E2 and before getting her signature and E4. Anyways, if you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have anything to say, please leave it down in the comments below. I would greatly appreciate it. Goodbye.